It's time to ruffle some feathers. Hopefully not, but these are the 5 things I would change about pro strongman as someone who's been on the whole circuit for 4 complete years now. These things are my personal opinions. I haven't consulted with anyone. This isn't the opinion of all of the guys or even anyone except for me, but I think they would be echoed by people. I think they're pretty reasonable things that would make the sport as a whole a hell of a lot better. Now, before I get into the 5, our number 1 problem is that the sport is stuck halfway between an entertainment vehicle and a participation sport. Participation sports like basketball, football, hockey, soccer, they have an economy, and entertainment sports like WWE, they of course also have an economy. But when it's halfway in between, it becomes very difficult. And without choosing which one that we are, it's very difficult to choose events on a consistent basis, to decide what kind of rules we have, to decide if how things are promoted, and if we want to turn people into characters, if we want people to be authentic, or if we want to cater to someone who wants to see extraordinary, larger than life, or we want someone to see records getting broken. And I don't know which one we're better off being, to be honest, and I don't think anyone does, and I think that's why we're stuck a little bit in limbo. And in my opinion, that's one of 2 reasons that we're not a mainstream sport, and I will talk about the second reason at the very end of the video, for reasons that you can probably assume. Without further ado, let's talk about the 5 things I would change about professional strongman. Number 1, far and away, I would love it if these independent competitions started talking to each other. World's Strongest Man, the Rogue Invitational, Strongest Man on Earth, and the Arnold's. The biggest challenge right now is if you compete in all 4 of those shows and you're lucky enough to be invited in one of the top 10 in the world, you have no off season. You think 4 shows, 12-week preps for each show when they're relatively spaced apart, 48 weeks of proper prep a year, that leaves 4 weeks to have an off season, to get better, to build a base, to do all these things, and honestly, to live a life. I took 6 months off this year. That's pretty normal in professional sport, but in strongman, it's extraordinary and it's strange. And it was a comeback when I came back to the Rogue Invitational. So I think if we had the competitions stacked all, say, in the first 7 months of the year, for example, that would be great. 7 months on, 5 months off. That way you can prep and prep and prep and stay in pretty good shape. Or we have 2 Q1 and 2 in Q3, for example. But right now, we have the Arnold in March, World's Strongest Man, which has traditionally fallen in May since I've been involved. Then we have Strongest Man on Earth in August and Rogue Invitational late October, early November. There's no off time. It's just not possible to have a whole lot of time to rest. So that's one thing. Number 2 is the events. If they could talk to each other, the events would be much more cohesive. They would make more sense. We could have shows actually declaring themselves to say, okay, Strongest Man on Earth is the heavy show of the year. The Arnold is the nostalgic heavy show. We do lots of older iconic events. World's Strongest Man is medleys and 1 max, and Rogue Invitational is medleys and 1 max. That way we have 2 really strong times of year and 2 strength endurance times of year. I think this is one thing that Giants Live does a really good job. They understand that they cannot max us out constantly. So yes, there's a criticism that it's too light and it's a bit of a drag race sometimes, but the benefit is that we can do those shows over and over and we stay in one piece. If the shows talk to each other, we would also then come up with some set of rules that exists across all competitions. I don't think any rule has ever been unfair. I don't think it's been unjust, but you do turn up the day before the show and learn what variation of the set of rules we're going to be using. For example, my overhead press has been something where it's caused a reasonable amount of noise online, and is it the most strict thing in the world? No, there's some things that I do to make my body do what it needs to do. So show after show, for a little while, I was learning the different set of rules to try to stop me from backbending. First, it was that you had to look at the judge, and that's fine. That's a pretty standard rule. And then it was your bicep needed to be between your ears. Oh no, then it was you had to stand upright, and then it was your bicep needed to be between your ears, and then it was that your hips, shoulders, elbows, and wrists need to be in one line. And I would find this out the day before. And this isn't something isolated to me. We also found out at the Rogue Invitational maybe 10 minutes before the event, or maybe the day before the event, that if we touched the rope for the arm over arm before we sat down, we'd be penalized 10 seconds. It's not unfair, but it's something we had never had to deal with before. I lost my head during the event because I broke my foot. I touched the rope, I got a 10-second penalty. It's not testing who's the strongest, and if it was something we were used to, it would be much easier. But since these things always shift around, it becomes more difficult. So them talking to each other to come up with the same set of rules would be great. Same thing for the standards. What kind of standard are we going to use for a yoke? A fast yoke, a slow yoke, a super heavy yoke, a log press? And every year you can sort of reevaluate and go, okay, here is what we're thinking for this. And you can have a rep fest and that's fine, or you can have a max out and that's fine. But these contests, if they talk to each other, you would find out we're going to do the max out, we're going to do the rep fest, we're going to do and that way we don't run into the big jerk over and over and over. And then ultimately, when we're exposed to something over and over and over and we don't have an off season to prep for it and we don't have time off, that's when injuries occur. And I believe that was the cascade that started my injuries, starting with max axle, and I chose a split jerk, that fine. But then we went to big jerk, went into another big jerk at World's Strongest Man. And so that was, 20 weeks of prepping split jerks when it's just sort of thrown on you. You just learn the events and you do your best. So not a problem, not an issue in and of itself, but if they talked, I think this would be much more cohesive and this would be better. I think the likelihood that these shows talk to each other is pretty low. I think the likelihood they come to any sort of consensus is very low. I don't see the Arnold moving date. I don't see World's Strongest Man moving date. I don't see Strongest Man on Earth moving date. I don't see the Rogue Invitational moving date because all these people have other things going on other than Strongman. We can't just chop and change and place things in different spots. So that's the first thing that I would change. Number 2, along the same lines, I think the athletes in Strongman need to have some sort of association, some sort of singular body that helps us advocate for ourselves. I think this would help in a multitude of ways. And the largest way is sponsorship. A lot of athletes don't have any sponsors. Even guys top 10 in the world, they oftentimes have $0 coming in from sponsors at all. And part of that is not being active on social media and not really wanting to pursue that, and that's fine. But if we had a little bit more transparency and an opportunity for a brand to say, I want to sponsor Strongman. Well, they could sponsor top 10 athletes in the world. We could all divvy up how much that is, and based on who you are and your profile and your accolades and your accomplishments, you could get a different chunk of that pie. But it would allow us to operate as a collective where they could sponsor the whole group of people to do a whole Strongman push. And I think we would have a lot more leverage that way. Not really for myself, not really for Tom Stolman, but for the guys ranked, say, 5 through 10, who are phenomenal athletes, who are coming up, who would be really helpful for them to be able to benefit from the sport. But they haven't really been able to break through that way yet. I think that would be incredibly helpful. Another way is prize money. I think prize money, I'm a business person. I love someone making money off of taking a risk. And that's every strongman contest in the world right now. And that's great. And whoever takes the risk deserves to make the money. Full stop. That being said, there's a bit of a monopoly in strongman, not by one person, but by one group of people. Now, monopoly is probably not the right way to say this, but if you don't like the arrangement at World's Strongest Man, it's not like there's an alternative for you to go to. If you don't like the arrangement at the Rogue Invitational, well, you cannot go, but there's nowhere for you to go to other than that. And so I don't think prize money needs to be increased, but the one thing that I think would be really useful, particularly in the case of World's Strongest Man, and maybe only in the case of World's Strongest Man, is that the athletes get a cut of either live stream fees or social media fees. And I have more thoughts on that in a second, but I think that would be something that doesn't take any more skin off the promoter's back and doesn't increase their risk at all, but allows us to have a proportional benefit to the promoters themselves. Next, if the athletes had an association organization, we would be able to have some sort of input and consultation on the setup of the contest. I don't think we need to know the weights and the exact events, although I don't see the harm in that. But even if we said, okay, here is what a contest can entail. And it for example, it cannot entail a max overhead and a max deadlift and a max squat, for example. It's going to hurt us. And yes, you can opt out of these shows, sure, but why don't we just make this good for everyone? Why don't we just get all the best guys saying, yep, this is appropriate, this makes sense. If we had contests set up in a way where the 4 majors have a certain ability to do certain things, like say 2 max events in a contest, and then something like a Giants Live, you can do 1 max in a contest. I don't think any promoter is going to really like that I'm saying this because they want to be able to do what they want to do, but I think on the collective, if we want everyone to win and we want everything to make sense, that is something that absolutely makes sense to me. And the last one, if there was a Strongman Athletes Association, we would be able to have health coverage while competing, or at least enforce that competitions need health coverage for us. This is a very confusing one to me that We have no coverage whatsoever. Now, every contest provides emergency medical staff and oftentimes provides physiotherapy on site, which is amazing and really helpful, and certainly something they don't have to do. But I think that could absolutely go one step further and just say, if you're an athlete and you tear your bicep or your pec or your quad or whatever during the contest, if it's during the contest, you will be covered and you're putting your body on the line for this promotion. I think the least you can do as a promotion is say, we're going to have your back on the back end if something goes wrong. And I think a Strongman Athletes Association would definitely be able to make some headway on that. Because right now, if I just personally say, I'm not competing if I don't have health coverage here, well, the sport moves on without me. And any individual guy, the sport moves on without them as well. But I would guess more people have been buried in medical debt in Strongman than have made a career. And there are businesses making money. And on the net, if athletes more often are buried in medical debt than they are in making a living, I think something needs to change. Thing number 3 I would change about Pro Strongman, I think we should have an official ranking system. Now, Rogue has started this, which is fantastic, but I don't think it's done perfectly. It's got the Rogue Invitational, Strongest Man on Earth, World's Strongest Man, and the Arnold as the 4 contests it considers for your ranking. Problem here is that if you don't make top 10 at Worlds, because let's say you were in a difficult group, you might have performed 5th best out of 30 in the heats. Well, you don't get through to the final, so you're not top 10 at Worlds. That means you're probably not getting invited to Rogue, you're probably not getting invited to the Arnold, and you may or may not get invited to Strongest Man on Earth, but regardless, the Strongest Man on Earth is not enough. It's not going to do enough to actually get you into the top 10 to break into these big shows. The other thing, and now they might give some points for Giants Live, now that I think about it. But regardless, someone like Luke Richardson has won Europe's Strongest Man and Giants Live World Tour Finals this year. And I believe he's ranked like number 28 or something like that. He's 37. He's way down the list, where his current form would be much higher than that. He's still not very good, just so you know, Luke. But he has potential. He's the future. He's the perpetual future. Love you. Anyway, I think there's 2 problems. One, there's not that many points going to Giants Live when if you do really well at those shows, you have beaten the best guys in the world. None of those shows are void of me and Tom and Evan and Mateusz and let's say Luke, if Luke was good, and Luke. That means that if you win that, you have beaten one of the top 10 guys in the world. And if you've ever beaten one of the top 10 guys in the world, unless they were absolutely useless at that show or injured or whatever, you probably deserve to have a shot at them at a major show, in my opinion. Now, that's part of it. I think the other part is that it extends out for 3 years. 3 years is probably too long. And you can accumulate a lot of points by having below average results in the top 10 shows if you compete in all of them over 3 years and look like you're number 6 in the world, number 7 in the world. I don't know who's in that ranking right now, by the way. I'm just saying hypothetically. It would be easy to be able to accumulate those points and sort of stick in there. And Strongman moves fast. Things change a lot. So I would probably have my ranking system. I would say it would be a rolling maybe 2 year would be more appropriate. And I would include Giants Lives. I would also include SCLs. I wouldn't have included SCLs before this year, but Reno now surely has changed all of our minds that if you thrive at SCL, you can thrive at the next level as well. Number 4, I think athlete coverage outside of Strongman contests need to improve. I make a substantial effort to be on social media, to post every day on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and get myself out there. And I do collaborations, etc., etc. But all of this is on me. I don't get any help from any governing body or organization or World's Strongest Man or nothing. I just set up a camera, hire people, and let's see what we can do. If World's Strongest Man had some sort of mini documentary series of something covering the personalities of the guys, well, that would be amazing. And I think we're back to, is it a sport or is it an entertainment vehicle? If it's an entertainment vehicle, you don't want to capture the people and their families and their every day-to-day life and how much they eat and whatever. You probably want to have some over-the-top thing. But to me, I think if we cover the personalities of the guys, Strongman's really interesting and exciting when you have a horse in the race. So let's get more people with horses in the race, and they will be excited to go out and see the show and compete. And you don't have to be the best in the world to have people invested in your life. I know a disproportionate amount of people interested and invested in Patty Haynes, for example. Maybe it's because he's one of the smaller guys. Maybe it's because they like his personality. I don't know. But he's, ranking-wise, maybe 7 to 10 in the world right now. He's really good, but has somehow disproportionately made a name for himself and is really interesting. Someone like Trey Mitchell doesn't like to be on social media. He doesn't really put his personality out there, But if you get to know Trey a little bit, there would be a huge swath of people in Southern Texas who Trey would be like their ride or die. Absolutely. So I think we need to facilitate that a little bit more. And I think it would be to the benefit of the individuals and the guys, but also to the shows, because more interest is going to come to the show if you generate more interest around the people who are involved in it. Lastly, number 5, before I get to my bonus topic. Number 5 is the sport just needs to be more appealing for fans. The pinnacle of our sport is World's Strongest Man. It does not have a live stream. There's no way to see it live. We see it 6 months later. This is a dead horse getting beaten. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this, but it certainly does hold us back that the pinnacle of our sport is covered well if it was the 90s. And it's just not. And I think I know it's an old contract. I don't know when it's up. We're told every year next year's the last year of the contracts. Who knows? But I think World's Strongest Man not getting live streamed or not on TV is definitely a major problem that holds the sport back. And I'm going to tell you why it's not on TV, or at least why I think. But the other thing is, at these shows, one of the challenges is if you put this on TV, at World's Strongest Man in the finals, we do one event at, say, 9 in the morning, we're done by 10. Our next event might not be till 1 in the afternoon. So how does a TV coverage talk for 3 hours about 1 hour of action, which is really only like 20 minutes of action because of the reset times and whatnot? How can you turn that into a live TV package? I think that's next to impossible, but it's not something that can't be overcome. Giants Live does 5 events over the course of 3 to 3.5 hours. I don't understand why we can't have that boiled down. If it's a 2-day show and we want to do 6 events, why can't we have 2 mini Giants Live setups, 3 events one day, 3 events the next day, and instead of being 3 to 3.5 hours that a Giants is for 5 events, well, we cut that down, and now we have an hour and a half of competing on one day and on the next day, and we don't have all of this dead time. Because right now, if you just want to watch Strongman and say there's nothing else going on, which I'll talk about in a second, there's nothing else going on, you're going to watch an event, and then you set your alarm for 2.5 hours later to go back and try to find your seat, and if it's outdoors, you're baking in the sun, and thankfully, other places have worked their way around this really well. So the Arnold has worked their way around this by having the strongmen and strongwomen go together. So we essentially alternate, and I think that's a great way to fill some time. We fill the time for the women fill the time for us, and there's always action going on. I think that's fantastic. Rogue Invitational has strongman, strongwoman, but we have CrossFit as well, so there's always action, which is great. But let's say Rogue Invitational, you see strongman, you see strongwoman, and let's say, for example, you just wanted to watch the strongwoman compete. You're going to watch the strongwoman compete, and then you're going to have strongmen compete, which you might be, marginally interested in. I assume you would be to some extent, just the same as strongman fans are probably marginally interested in strongwoman, because it's a similar sport. It's the same sport, of course. But then you got to watch 2 hours of CrossFit, which, do you like it? Do you not? I don't know. Probably a little bit, but it's probably not that interesting. You don't have the same horse in the race, etc. So we are creating external entertainment, but this is as though the halftime show at a basketball game would last 4.5 hours between the halves. And we hope that people's entertainment is maintained over that time. How? I don't see how that's a reasonable path forward. But let's just say you just want to watch the strongman. Well, at the Arnold, you could watch it a full day in an hour and a half. And then they announce in 15 minutes the Strong Woman contest is starting. And you just finished all this excitement and hype. You've got a short intermission. 15 minutes later, you come back because you just saw all that excitement and hype, and there was action and things always happening. You're going and you're moving. And now you watch the whole Strong Woman. And now you get invested in that sport. And it's not this break between the dead space and the strongman and vice versa. And I think it would be a better way to give everyone exposure, everyone attention, and get everyone invested in each sport. So I think the rest times are unnecessary. I think we can sort of make our way around, have your max the first event of the day, so there's good warm-up time and you can space out a bit more. But let's say last year, the sled drag, log carry into sled drag at the Arnold, we don't need a rest time for that. I don't even think anyone warmed up for that. We just stood backstage waiting and did like 2 pulls, carried a weird log a couple of times. And you're like, yeah, this is what it is. What are you gonna do? Those are my 5. My bonus, saved for the end, as you can imagine. Strongman would be better tested. It would be a better sport. It would be more digestible, and people would like it more. There would be more brands willing to hop on board. There'd be mainstream brands willing to hop on board, and they would want to cover it on TV. That is the elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about. We want to pretend that there's this thing going on, that we're all getting tested and it's all above board, blah, blah, blah. Come on. Like, we have to operate in reality at a certain point. You walk around the Arnold, and 80% of the teenagers there are on steroids. And I asked many people who are in the know, who coach teenagers, who know for sure they are doing them. And if no one was doing it, I get the attitude of like, let's just not talk about it. Let's pretend it's not a thing. Let's just push it under the rug. But why are we pretending? Why are we doing this? Like, I think it's better to educate, to say that there's unhealthy and healthy ways to do it. But better yet, I think it's better just to test the sport. Weights will go down and it'll just enter a new era of like, okay, that was the old world records. We're going to go to some new world records. And the guys of the current era, that would be a thing to figure out of like, okay, well, clearly we don't fit that criteria right now. How long until you would allow that to happen? But it's almost like you would have a year of no records of testing, and then in 2 years' time, everyone would shrink down, be a little bit lighter, lift a little bit less, but you'd still have pretty much the same results. You'd have healthier people, you'd have healthier looking people, you'd have the prospect of getting into the Olympics, you'd have major broadcasters much more interested in the sport. I personally, I just think that's the way that it would reasonably go. But it takes away all those people who want this to be a circus show, who want it to be the freakiest thing that they've ever seen. So we're stuck. Those are my 2 cents. I would love to know what you guys think. Do you agree with me on those 5? Do you disagree? If there's any pro strongman watching, I would love you to pop it down in the comments or chuck it up on your Instagram and give your 2 cents. And let's try to keep the sport moving forward. It's going to be around for a long time. People will always be interested about 2 things in sport, no matter how long history takes us. In 1,000 years, do I think the NBA will be a thing? Probably not. It's only been around for 150 or so. In 1,000 years, do I think people will be interested in the world's fastest man and the world's strongest man? 100%. 100%. Since the start of time, those 2 things have been interesting, and they always will be. So let's be committed to making this better for the long run. It's not going anywhere, but we have to make sure that we continue to do our best to make this a way that most people want to see it, that guys can make careers out of this, that everyone can live a happy life, and we can have this sport thriving for a long time to come. So thanks for watching, guys. As per always, lift heavy, be kind. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Pop that comment down below. We'll catch you tomorrow.